my name is Anna Kijanowska and I'm representing University of Silesia. I will be presenting a paper titled History of the Mazurka and its Revival in the 20th and 21st Century Polish Piano Music. I would like to mention that this research has been supported by the Polish Ministry of Culture, National Heritage and Sport. Mazurka is a Polish dance, probably the best known Polish dance, which we can attribute to Chopin, its popularity. It has been known for over 5 centuries. The earliest mentioned sites of the mazurkas we have in the turn of 15th century, and we can see some examples of the folk dances also in the 16th century. It is well known that in the 18th century the Polish folk dance has spread from the countrysides to salons and was also danced at courts. And in the 18th century the mazurka was composed, which later became a Polish anthem. So there is a very rich history behind the mazurka. Now, the question, of course, always is, what is the mazurka? So, the mazurka we know at the present is a stylized form of 3 different folk dances from the lowland region of Poland. As you might know, Poland has a very distinct parts, so to speak, geographically. The northern and the central parts are lowland regions, and the very south of Poland we have mountains, so it is called a highland region. And therefore the folk music of those 2 different regions differs greatly. We can say that it is so distinct that none of the Polish people would have any difficulties distinguishing between the 2 folk music from the 2 regions. The major difference is the time signature. The lowland music of Poland is mostly in 3/4 time, and the highland folk music of Poland is mostly in 2/4 time. Besides the metric structure, we also have a very distinct and different characteristic. Even people are different from those regions. As always, and as it is the case in mountaineers from countries from around the world, also in Poland, people from the Podhale region, which is the highland region, tend to be and act very differently from those of the lowland region. For example, because of the environment, because of the harsh conditions, somehow they adopted also the character, at least it seems like they did. And they also speak a little bit of different language. They speak with what we call gwara, and that's pretty much a mountain slang. Therefore, the music from Podhale tends to be rougher, it's more accented, it uses a lot of syncopations, and the dances use a lot of acrobatic movements. Now, one would ask, why do I speak about highland region and acrobatic dances if the topic of the mazurka is not, at least at first, connected with that region? Well, in the history, as I mentioned earlier, the dance has been developing throughout the centuries. Chopin was the one who stylized the 3 folk dances of the lowland region. And these are Oberek, Kujawiak and Mazur. Within those there are also character differences. They are all in 3/4 time. However, Oberek is a very fast dance, Kujawiak is much slower, lyrical, often in a minor chord mode dance, and Mazur is very vibrant, and it stresses the weak parts of the measures, usually 2nd or the 3rd beat. In the Podhale region we have a number of dances, Góralski, Zbójnicki, and they are danced with sticks. They are very different, as I mentioned earlier, in the character. But let's go back to Chopin. So Chopin took the three lowland dances and he stylized them, composing all these beautiful mazurkas in the Romantic area. Also in the 19th century we had a number of great Polish composers, even before Chopin, who were so fascinated by the dance that they created hundreds of them. Among them was quite well-known composers such as Elsner, Kurpiński, even Moniuszko. But also, I found out recently, we have a number of female Polish composers who wrote a number of mazurkas before Chopin. For example, Maria Szymanowska is one of the first known Polish composer who contributed to the history of the mazurka. After Chopin, mazurkas were still composed, and I will be also presenting lecture on composers and mazurkas written in the 19th century, but right now I would like to move on to the 20th and 21st century. So Karol Szymanowski was the one after Chopin who brought not only mazurka genre, but all Polish music back to international stages. He is the best known after Chopin, probably, and he also composed 22 mazurkas. Now, his mazurkas differ greatly from those of Chopin. How so? Szymanowski added to the lowland region of Mazury, of three dances Chopin uses, he added Podhale folk music. So he mixed folk music dances from lowland region, which are in 3/4, with folk dances from from southern region, from the mountain terrain region called Podhale, and those dances are in 2/4 time. He added a lot of accents and he created a very eclectic environment, the one which fascinates many musicians and listeners around the world. I personally recorded all of the Szymanowski's mazurkas. You can find my CD online, and it was released by Dux in 2005. It's also on the YouTube if you'd like to listen. They are probably one of the most unique mazurkas one can ever hear or dream of. I love the music. Now, the subject of this lecture, however, is what happens to the mazurka genre after Szymanowski. Again, we have a number of great compositions. I have 2 volumes of mazurkas which were written from the pretty much start. So it begins with Moniuszko and Szymanowska, and the last mazurka here is by Sowa, and it's 1994. So the anthology of mazurkas contains around 75 mazurkas, and it is of course very difficult to choose for you what to present, but I have several for you. I hope the time allows me to show you the influences and the character of them. So the first one I would like to mention is one by very well-known composer, well, very well-known in the group, I would say. I guess it's all relative, and that is Tansman. As you might know, Tansman spent most of his life in Paris, and actually there are some Parisian influences in this mazurkas. The mazurka was written in 1932, and it begins with a very melancholic, almost Kujawiak-like character. Let me play for you just the opening. So this is what we would call influence of Kujawiak dance. In the middle, however, Tansman uses some foreign influences, I would guess. It is from Paris. And you can hear clearly Satie here. Let me play for you just a fragment. So by just hearing the harmony, you can tell that we are in Paris, not in Poland. Of course, it's all in 3/4 time, and the composition is titled Mazurka. Another fascinating Mazurka we have by Jerzy Tyszkowski, who is probably almost unknown, I would say. The only information we can find are his pop songs. This Mazurka is from 1954 and uses a very dissonant language. However, it is quite traditional in the approach, I would say, besides the musical language, tonal language, which is modern. Let me just play a little bit. It's a very short Mazurka. One-page short composition. Another composer who wrote wonderful music, really, and is still alive, is Marian Borkowski. He is the one who is probably the most educated and went through a number of very interesting experience in Europe, mostly. He studied with Nadia Boulanger and Messiaen himself, and Xenakis, as well as with Stockhausen. So this is truly outstanding education experience. And he studied at Paris Sorbonne, at Paris University. Just very long resume, how we say. The Mazurka he wrote uses a lot of Podhale folk dance, and it's a very rustic dance, almost like Szymanowski. Let me play just the opening. He also uses a lot of variety in the left hand, which is actually written in 2/4 time, variety of dynamic changes. And the right hand has a very distinct folk melody from Podhale region. The melodic structure, or rather tonal character, is in Podhale folk, written in Górale Podhale scale, but the rhythm resembles Oberka dance. So we have a truly eclectic environment where we can hear both Podhale folk music and lowland folk music. Yes, so this is a Mazurka by Marian Borkowski. Another interesting composition by Maria Pokrzywińska was written in 1976, and she was a student of Borkowski. She also is influenced by Messiaen, which you can hear in many metric changes. Very clearly the character of the dance changes. It's more lyrical and in minor mode. Due to the time restriction, I will have to speed up my presentation with the Mazurkas, unfortunately. The next fascinating composer and a beautiful piece was written in 1986, composed by Andrzej Dudkiewicz, one of my favorite ones, and this one also carries a lot of Podhale character, a lot of accented notes, syncopations, ornamentations, and has that rural Podhale folk clearly included. Surprises us because we are back to 19th century salon and Chopin, and here Mazurka changes its character completely. reminding the chord, of course. Another composer of the 20th century, not known almost at all, is Czesław Grudziński. In this mazurka we have clearly influence of Jewish music as well as Podhale. I think you will hear both just by playing the opening. So, very vivid, very fast, rough, and rural, of course. Czesław Grudziński also was a very prolific composer. He wrote 8 sonatas, among others. And the last mazurka in this set is mazurka by Marian Sava, 1994. I will just play the opening for you. Again, clearly influence of Jewish and Podhale music. He also uses parallel motions, which is very common in the Podhale folk music. One of the better known composers in the 20th century, 20th and 21st century actually, is, or was rather, because he passed away recently, is Wojciech Hilar, and he wrote 3 mazurkas. His music is mostly known by film lovers. He wrote over 130 scores for over 130 movies and many pieces by orchestra. His major influence was, however, Podhale folk music. So here, again, Podhale and Szymanowski, you can hear both because this is the love they both share, the love for Podhale folk music. Let me just play a very short fragment from the first mazurka by Hilar. So you can hear already party has started. It's very vivid, very fast, very exciting, and I think quite wonderful. What I would like to add at the end is that I'm planning on commissioning a number of mazurkas by living composers, and I hope I will be able to present for you some of them in next conference or in concerts, and I'm very much looking forward. Thank you very much for your invitation. Thanks. In the 20th century, mazurka dances were written by hundreds of composers from different countries. In Poland, composers such as Pankiewicz, Noskowski, Leszetycki, Stojowski, Statkowski, Koczalski, Meltzner, Niewiadomski, Geblenz, Friedman, Malinowski, Chorbowski, Michałowski, Łabuński, Nowowiejski, Szoluto, Szałowski, Gradstein, Cylkow, Wojtowicz, Tansman, Żuławski, Maciejewski, Nawrocki, Tyszkowski, Borkowski, Thryman, Pokrzywińska, Dudkiewicz, Grudziński, Sava, and in the 21st century, Hilar were among composers who wrote many mazurkas for piano. They all used models from both Chopin and Szymanowski, and based their compositions on Polish folk music from both regions, because after the Second World War, Podhale and the lowland part of Poland were within the borders of Poland. Because of a very limited time, I will present only a few mazurkas by composers of the 20th and 21st century. Some of them are well known, some lesser known, and some not known at all. One of the most known among them is Alexander Tansman, who was born in Poland and spent his life both in the United States, Paris, and partially in Poland. He was the first Polish composer, of course, who was nominated to Oscar, and he also wrote 36 mazurkas. The one I would like to present for you today is his mazurka, written in 1932, and it is in a style of a kujawiak, which is in a slower tempo and very melancholic style. The middle part of the mazurka, the B section, very much resembles the music of Satie and of course shows the influence of Parisian life. Alfred Gradstein, who was born in 1904 in Poland and died at early age at 1954, studied in Vienna and in Paris. He was well educated and well read. He wrote, among other works, Mazurka Suite and was also a composer of many popular songs. His Mazurka, which I am presenting today, was written in 1928 and 1929. He uses a lot of Podhale folk music features, such as dissonance language, reverse dotted rhythm, and a very characteristic accompaniment pattern of the left hand, namely the open fifths interval along with the ornamented dissonance. Czesław Grudziński is a composer of the next Mazurka. He was born in 1911 and died in 1999. He was a very prolific composer who wrote, among many other works, 8 piano sonatas. He also cherished the Mazurka genre, and towards the end of his life he wrote 3 Mazurkas. The one Mazurka I'm playing today was written in 1990, 2 years before his death. It uses a lot of syncopation and stresses very clearly the second beat of the measure. It uses also Podhale folk music melodic scales and its features. One of the most interesting composers I find was a mazurka written by Polish composer born in 1934, Marian Borkowski. His music shows clearly the experience and knowledge he gained during his international studies with Nadia Boulanger, Messiaen, Xenakis, Ligeti, and Stockhausen. He also studied philosophy and musicology at the Sorbonne, Paris University, and Paris Conservatory. He is a highly accomplished composer, pianist, and theorist. He wrote 2 mazurkas for piano in 1958. The one mazurka I'm going to perform for you today is titled Vivo Rustico and is a very interesting and unique composition. He uses polyrhythmic structures. The left hand moves in duple meter, while the right hand plays a rustic melody based on Podhale melodic material in the right hand. The rhythmic structure of the right hand resembles oberka dance, the fast dance, the one which turns around in a very fast tempo. Maria Pokrzewińska, born in 1954, is a female Polish composer who, I admit, was unknown to me. He was a student of Borkowski at the Warsaw Music Academy. The Mazurka I'm presenting was written in 1976. She is also a very prolific composer and very much influenced by the music of Olivier Messiaen. The Mazurka I will be performing is, of course, in 3/4 time, but it also uses a lot of metric variety. She uses, for example, 7/8 time, 9/8 time, 6/8. There are a lot of different metrical structure throughout the piece. The composition uses, however, very clearly Kujawiak rhythms in the middle. It has somewhat nostalgic quality with very clearly accented weak parts of the measures. It uses also a lot of rubato, just like in Chopin's composition, and starts with rather loud call to a dance. Andrzej Dziutkiewicz, born in 1942, is another fascinating figure in the history of writing mazurkas. He graduated with Doctor of Musical Art degree from the Eastman School of Music and studied with Samuel Adler. He also taught at international festivals, including the music courses in Seoul, in South Korea, as well as National Music Camp in Interlochen in the United States. The Mazurka I'm presenting today was written in 1986, and it is based on Chopin's model as well as Podhale folk music and Szymanowski's model of the dances. It starts with a very characteristic open fifths accompaniment with a dissonance and the ornament. The middle section of the Mazurka, on the other hand, resembles Chopin and the salon version of the Mazurka dance. It is one of the best mazurkas of this series. Marian Sava, born in 1937, who passed away in 2005, was another composer I did not know well. He is the most prolific composer of the group. He was also an improviser and organist. He mostly wrote for voice and choruses and organ. He wrote, for example, 5 concerti for organ. Overall, he wrote over 1,000 completed works. The mazurka I'm presenting today starts in a slow tempo, almost like a kujawiak, in tempo andantino. However, throughout the piece, it starts to develop and changes its character. It uses a lot of parallel structures and unison, just like Podhale folk music. He also accents weak parts of the measures, and the composition is based on melodic folk structure of the Podhale folk music.